Gad's name in Hebrew actually sounds like this exact same word used for raiders. So the name and raiders, what he says about them, they're actually they go hand in hand. And verse 19 simply notes that Gad would be very effective in military struggles. This may be due to their location, which they would settle in the very easternmost part of the land, east of the Jordan River. So they were constantly attacked by other nations. And so they were on the eastern side of it. They would have been easily accessible to raiders and attack. And so this was just a fulfillment of the prediction. And you will also see in 1 Chronicles chapter 12 that a great number of troops who served King David came from the tribe of Gad. And so these were fighting people. They were used to a struggle, and that all came to be. Asher. Verse 20 states that Asher would enjoy good soil. His tribe would later, he inherited the very fertile land of Carmel along the sea coast. Naphtali, his descendants would settle in the upper Galilee area, would grow and flourish with the fertile land. We'll skip over Joseph for just a second, and we'll get to Benjamin, Jacob's youngest son. He calls him a ravenous wolf. And so much like Judah, who we'll speak about in a moment, he gets a fierce animal to talk about himself. This shows that his descendants would be great warriors, producing many of Israel's military leaders moving forward. Ehud, you will know, comes from this tribe. Saul, Jonathan, both come from the tribe of Benjamin. They would be known for their ability to fight, and they were known for their success in battle. And so this is highlighted in the centuries to come. When Israel went to war, oftentimes they would cry out, "After you, O Benjamin." And so they were very good in fighting. And that leads us to Joseph. Look at how Jacob blessed Joseph. As Jacob were to look up at his sons, one son looked different. That would have been Joseph, the prime minister of Egypt. And I'm sure that he was decked out in all of his Egyptian attire. Last week we highlighted Jacob blessing Joseph's sons, giving them the blessing. And his name appropriately means fruitful. So now Jacob begins to bless Joseph. He blesses Joseph. He celebrates Joseph's life. He celebrates Joseph's character, all with a play on Ephraim's people, with God's intervention in his life and what God has done in his life. And so they would not have survived if God hadn't done this work in Joseph's life. And so verses 23 and 24 highlight the struggles that Joseph has endured up to this point. You've been immediately, and you would have been justified in doing so. But that wasn't God's plan. And so look at verse 24, and it tells you why. How could someone endure so much and still honor God with their life? And your Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. A few weeks back, we mentioned that how God had this. He said, God is your shepherd. You are cared for just like a sheep. And so all these names that Jacob throws out to Joseph's blessing, look at him, mighty one of Jacob, a shepherd, the stone of Israel, the God of your fathers, the Almighty, El Shaddai. These were all names that Jacob inherited the promised land. Lastly, Jacob elevated Judah to a place of power and prominence. To a place of power. The greatest blessing that Jacob gives to his son was not to his favorite son, Joseph. And I'm sure that's what many of the brothers thought. But it was not Joseph. It was going to Judah. And I want us to just think back and remember Judah. Okay? Selling your brother. He wanted to kill his brother. Selling his brother into slavery. raising sons that were so evil that God put them to death, sleeping. Judah was the same Judah that when it was time when Joseph was putting his brothers to the test, he took the place of Benjamin. And I don't want us to forget that he was taking the place of Benjamin, for your father, who by all measures was pretty much old enough to die. So you're going to go to prison for. I just want to remind us that this would have happened in order. So it would have been the first three brothers, all disqualified, and then this blessing would have happened to Judah. And so it's because of God's work in Judah. You see four images as he talks about Judah. The first image is of a warrior. He says, your brothers shall praise you. It was Joseph at first who had the dream that his brothers would bow down to him. And now Jacob is telling Judah, your brothers are going to bow down to you. The descendants of your brothers will bow down. The lion cub's sitting there trying to fight off the hyenas and scare them with this roar. And they're like, oh, do it again. That's kind of funny. And then Mufasa does it. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's not. He says, you're a young lion. You're not a fierce lion yet. You're like a young lion. This lion cub thing, when you think about a lion cub, it appears to be weak, powerless, but soon it grows up to be fierce. Part by the life of another famous offspring of Judah, that would be King David, who would come through the line of Judah. We know that Saul was known for killing his thousands, but David was known for killing his tens of thousands. So David was a warrior. And this ultimately, David, who was a man after God's own heart, from the tribe of Judah, there would come another lion. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But Judah's blessing would come through battle. And we see this through a king that would remain with Judah until ultimately the Messiah steps onto the scene. And so to the Messiah would come the obedience of the peoples. And it would not happen the way they talked about. We're going to read about a little of how the Messiah would. Next, it has an image of prosperity. Verse 11 and 12 speak of the benefits that would come to Judah's people. He says, binding his foal to the vine and his donkey colt to the choice vine, he has washed his garments in wine and his vesture in the blood of grapes. It says there will be such an abundance. It says there will be such an abundance of grapes that people won't even worry about washing their clothes in wine. The offspring of Judah will have possessions in abundance. Lastly, this imagery that's shown here is this wine-soaked garment of the descendants of Judah. And while this statement, he has washed his garments, in some of the things that it talked about, the prophets anticipated a prophet to come who had crimson-stained garments of a coming king, who brings victory through the wrath-filled judgment that is yet to come. And this was a king that they said was coming to this Messiah in his blood, pointing us forward. Before his death, Jesus is offered wine to drink. His side is pierced. He had blood-soaked clothes that they stripped off of him. All of these things, all these images, we can look back at and go, is that what Jacob was talking about as he's talking about Judah? So this rule brought about by Judah's offspring is a rule that comes through blood. Because of Jacob's blessing, the nation of Israel will be looking to the descendants of Judah who will be born from the dead so that he might have first place in everything. So Judah is a changed man, just as Jacob is a changed man. He's a man who's been transformed. And from Judah will come this promise of a messianic king, of this king that would rule forever. And so that's Jacob's blessing to his son. Let's talk about Jacob's death. The death of a patriarch. The book of Genesis will end with the people of Israel still living in Egypt. not the land of promise. They don't have a land of their own. But we have seen that both through Jacob and through Joseph's words, they will anticipate people through the tribe of Judah. If you look back at Jacob's life, it's a life that is filled with struggle to believe God. In a few weeks, I'm supposed to preach on a Sunday morning, and one of the things that I've started to look at was Jacob and just how much struggle there was in his life, how much he went through. And it was just all the time, it was because I don't trust God. I don't believe God. I'm going to take things into my own hands because I don't believe God. I don't trust God to do what he said he's going to do. And here at the end of his life, if you recall 20 years ago, he's 147 now. Just 20 years ago, he was an old man sitting at home, not able to provide for his family, not able to feed his family, sending his sons away to Egypt, to a foreign land, in the hopes to buy enough food for them to survive. You would think that someone would have less of that at the end of their life as an old person, but here you see Jacob trusting God at the end. Your offspring will be like the dust of the ground. And he commanded them to be fruitful and multiply. And guess what? Jacob is beginning to see these things come to fruition. He's trusting that God's provided for us every step of the way. And even while they're not in the promised land yet, he still trusts God and he believes God. Jacob desired to be buried with Leah. Desired to be buried with Leah. Another interesting request at his death. Jacob had 2 wives, Rachel and Leah. Rachel was his favorite. He loved Rachel more. Probably why Joseph and Benjamin were his favorite sons. So why would Jacob want to be buried with Leah and not with Rachel? I think we've talked about this a couple of times, but finally at the end of his life, also Jacob is trusting the fact that God is sovereign and that he has a plan. And he gets very specific. Jacob was determined to be buried in the promised land with his fathers, with his ancestors, with his family. The reason was very simple. He believed God. Look at what he says again. Verse 29. I am to be gathered with my people. Bury me with my fathers, because it's them who God is doing this work through. He believes it. Bury me with Leah. Jacob knew this blessing would come through Abraham, through Isaac, through Jacob, and through Judah. And so it was Judah's offspring that would bring about the Redeemer. And Jacob is saying to me, bury me there. A version of a man who is rotten to the core. Yet God wanted to use him for his purposes. Jacob was a rotten dude. I mean, you think about some of the things that he did, and swindling his brother and listening to his mom. And he was rotten and trying to take advantage of a situation, even through the whole situation with his wives. And he was just a rotten dude. And so all of these things, God still chose him. God still wanted to use him. And so I don't know about you as much as I know about myself, but I'm pretty rotten to the core as well. Maybe I'm a little more rotten than some of you. You're like, yeah, you probably are. But anyway. But honestly, how great and how undeserving God's grace is for us. We don't deserve it. We deserve separation. We deserve punishment. But God chooses to use us. He chooses to reveal himself to us. And I just want this to be an encouragement to you, an encouragement to us. It doesn't matter to who he created you to be. We sang that song earlier, Give Us Clean Hands. It's a song about humbling yourself before a holy God. It shows our devotion to God, the rejection of the things of this world. In the Old Testament, it was all about idols. Today, it's just about anything that's not pointed to God. Those are all idols. It's stuff. And give us clean hands. And this reference to the God of Jacob, just speak about that this evening as we finish up. God delights using sinful people to bring glory to himself. And I'm really glad because we're all sinful people and he uses us to bring glory to himself. Last point. Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah who is worthy of our praise. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah who is worthy of our praise. Judah was blessed by his father as the son of promise. The son that was blessed to be the seed that would continue on. The promise of a descendant that would one day bring redemption to the people of Israel. If you have a copy of God's Word, if you wouldn't open it back up and turn to Revelation. We're going to read from Revelation 5 as we end up. Because as we see this blessing promised all the way back through John of how this blessing will be extended to those who have faith in the lion from the tribe of Judah. Revelation 5. In heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look into it. And I began to weep loudly because no one was found worthy to open the scroll or to look into it. And one of the elders said to me, "Weep no more. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah on the throne." And when he had taken the scroll, and the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each holding a harp, the golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, "Worthy are you to take the scroll and to open its seals, for you were slain. By your blood receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing." And I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea and all that is in them saying, "To him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and might forever and ever." And the 4 living creatures said, "Amen." And the elders